Welcome to the Screen Podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Wendy Mitchell. I'm a contributing editor at Screen International. And we are now on our third podcast daily of Cannes 2026. Thanks to everybody who's tuning in. I'm hearing great feedback as I walk around. Not feedback as in buzzing noises, but everybody's loving the podcast. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I am joined for day 3 by Mona Tabbara, who's a senior reporter, UK and Ireland at Screen. Hi, Mona.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Finally making your podcast debut. We've been begging. And of course, Matt Mueller, the editor-in-chief of Screen. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Wendy.
Hope you're all holding up okay. It feels like I've been here for a month already, but yet this is day 3. Today, I am actually recording at the Screen editorial office at the Majestic. You might hear furious typing behind me by some very busy colleagues. This episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about the UK, because yesterday's episode, we talked a little bit about where is the US. We could also probably say a bit of the same about where are the UK films at Cannes this year. So, Mona, I know that's something you've been tracking closely. Where is the UK? Obviously, Clio Barnard has her film in Director's Fortnight, but other than that, doesn't really feel like a huge presence here. Am I right?
So at first look, it feels a bit light on the ground. But I think by that, we really mean Element Pictures and Good Chaos are on fallow years. I think since I started coming to Cannes, I think this is my 5th one now, they've had projects most, if not every year. So bit of lightness, but if you look a little further in, do a deeper dive, there are some really exciting emerging talents. We've got The End of It, which Ben spoke about on the podcast a couple of days ago. There's also Victorian Psycho, which is in certain regard, which Anton is producing and selling. It shot in Ireland and the UK. Keeper Pictures are also involved, which is a wonderful Irish production company. We've also got, not UK strictly, but shout out to Samson Films with Tin Castle in Critics Week, which I'm very excited to see. It was quite an under-the-radar documentary about an Irish traveller family. So that's another great example of Irish representation. There's Cantona, which I'm sure we're all...
Ooh, ah, Cantona is what I say to you, Mona.
Which is produced by Pitch, which is a London-based production company. Mark Cousins is in classics. There's also some immersive projects. So I think out of 8 films in competition, 3 of them are UK projects, which is very exciting. And there's also 2 NFTS shorts in La Cinef, which is a great coup. I think it's the 2nd year in a row for one of those filmmaking teams to have a film in Cannes, and I think it's the first time since 2015 that 2 NFTS projects have been in the lineup. So yeah, in the fringes, there are some wonderful projects.
Yeah, so there's still some good news stories here. And of course, everybody's very happy about Clio's film. I see Buildings Fall Like Lightning being in Fortnight. I stopped by the British Pavilion today, and I have to say, great place to get a free cup of tea, and I even got a custard cream. So if anybody's missing tastes of home, go in there for your free cup of tea. I don't drink Lipton, even in France. But Mona, there's no big UK reception like there was last year, and people like Film 4 don't even have their usual villa. Is this just a sort of blip? Is this crisis? Is this just the case of maybe we'll see more British films at the autumn festivals?
Well, I think the UK industry do love a free glass of wine, and I'd say there are fewer events that provide that this year. United at Cannes was like a really lovely event last year that Film 4, BBC Film, BFI and BAFTA collaborated on. Chris Bryant, who was then the culture secretary, came and gave a very emotive, off-the-cuff speech, shall we say.
A very long speech, Mona, is what I remember. Yeah. Yes.
That there was talk of that being an annual thing. That's been quietly shelved, I imagine, with a lack of those UK projects, it was maybe hard to get sign off on some of those budgets, but hopefully it will return in future years. Film Force Villa's been sold, so that's another UK hangout spot that is no longer with us. I think Headgear have got a different villa as well. I don't think they're doing a reception on the same scale that they used to do, but not a bad thing for the UK industry to have to go and mingle with some international folk rather than clinging to each other for dear life. So I think, yeah, slightly thin on the ground for UK events, but maybe not the worst thing in the world.
Having said that, Mona, I'm sure I'll see you at the Petty Majestic later, so let's see. Matt, Morrison's, yes. Karaoke at Morrison's, I believe. Some Brits are fond of. Matt, what's your thoughts on this UK presence at Cannes this year? Is it
I
cause
think
for
it's always
concern? It's fine.
no, I don't think so. I think it's always cyclical, isn't it? I mean, one year a country does particularly well, the next year it doesn't do so well. It's all about companies' pipelines. I mean, as Mona pointed out, Element Pictures just happened to have two amazing films last year that were selected for a certain regard, with My Father's Shadow and Pillion. So
I know
it
they've
was
already shot another 3, by the way, that are now in post, so it's not like
exactly so
Element is in
maybe
danger. Ed
precisely.
Guiney, you're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. So maybe next year we see some element projects cropping up again, and obviously, Urchin was here in a certain regard last year. So I think when you have quite an incredible year like that, it buoys the entire industry, but it also builds a lot of expectations. So when you come this year and you don't see many films selected by the programmers, it can't help but feel a little bit disappointing. And we will probably see some UK projects crop up later this year. I mean, certainly, obviously, at the BFI London Film Festival. Maybe at Toronto. I mean, last year Toronto had I Swear, right? So I mean, that was a great launch pad for that film. So Cannes not the be all and end all for British films, but as Mona says, maybe quite good for the Brits to get out and meet some international people more this year and less hang out with each other.
Good idea. And also, we should probably mention the Mike Lee, which Cornerstone is selling. That should be ready, I think, in time for Venice. So there's plenty of great films coming in the pipeline. Just doesn't feel quite as lively here. Mona, I know you have talked to quite a few of the UK buyers and sellers. How are they feeling?
I think cautious optimism is always the way that the sellers and buyers enter the market. I don't think anyone can say it's
Does
in
anyone ever say anything but cautious optimism these days? I feel
off
like it's
the,
a mantra for the entire sales community. But, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
off the record, maybe slightly different tone. But I think what has been really lovely to see, and this is something that we'll be writing about on screen in the coming couple of days, is a lot more UK projects with UK sales agents attached and really pedigree UK projects. So Bankside announced Ceasefire, which is about the what to do with the troubles in Northern Ireland. That's got an Oscar-winning director, Oscar winners in its cast. It's the Kneecap producers. They, for Kneecap, went with a French sales agent, and it's nice to see them back with a UK sales agent. There's lots of other examples of that. Cornerstone have got Christopher Andrews' next project. He had his debut with Charades. Cornerstone have A Waiter in Paris, which is even shooting in France, and that's still with a UK sales agent. So I think after a period of a lot of UK films going with the French, maybe we're seeing the start of something positive in those projects coming back into the UK fold.
Yeah, because the UK has so many sales companies. It traditionally has been a sales and financing hotbed. So it's great news if some of those UK filmmakers or UK auteurs even are trusting the UK sellers to handle those films.
Yeah,
Just a slight counter argument to that, because we did a big interview with Gerard's before Cannes, and obviously they have very kind of fantastically backed some British films. I mean, you mentioned Kneecap, Mona, but I think it's interesting with them. They backed Urchin, but with them they said basically we came on board some debut films where nobody else was interested, and we took the risk on those projects. So what the point they're making is basically they're the ones, some of these French companies, they're the ones to willing to take a risk quite early on. And I think there is something as well. I think you touched on it in yesterday's podcast, Wendy, that having a French sales agent isn't always necessarily a bad thing when it comes to sort of submitting your film to Cannes. So, obviously, we see French sales agents dominating the selection every year, and this year as well. So, I mean, Shiraz has a ton of titles in. So again, I think there's, it's a balanced argument. I think about, it's not just that, UK projects are being taken by French sales agents. It's that they're willing to back projects maybe that other companies aren't.
And I would say that is, or the UK sales agents would say that's linked to the fact that the French sales agents are very well supported within their national system, and the UK sales agents aren't. That's maybe changing. UK Global Screen Fund has introduced some new measures on that front, but I think,
And they've got increased funding, the UK
yeah,
Global Screen Fund, which was good
18
news for the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they would say they would have liked to take some of those risks, but financially were unable to, but maybe positive things around the corner. And I think maybe there's, some interesting things happening in the equity space that UK sales agents are exploring. So yeah, positive things are coming.
I
And I
mean,
think also,
yeah, sorry. I think we want all these companies to be supporting new filmmakers, new voices, don't we? And being in the market and being engaged. And so I think it's kind of positive on both sides. I think it's great if the French remain interested and want to continue kind of branching out into the UK industry, and it's great if the UK industry and UK sales agents do get more, support going forward to maybe sort of, to back some of these projects at an earlier phase.
Yeah, and I'll just plug that the UK Pavilion here in Cannes always has a sort of rich program of talks for people interested in learning about funding. I'm going to be hosting a chat with Eva Yates and Farhan Abullah from BBC Film and Film 4, respectively. If you want to learn about how they finance films, I mean, there's always information to be had there about the Global Screen Fund, about co-producing with the UK as well. So check out some of those. And the free tea. And the custard creams, as long as they last. Custard cream's not guaranteed. Matt, what else is sort of impressing you at Cannes this year? So I know we're still such early days, and we read in Screen yesterday you had a delayed flight. Breaking news. But yeah, what are you also thinking are some talking points at Cannes this year?
Well, I think, I mean, we touched on it a little bit. We did a big big sort of deep dive into kind of private equity players, and private finance in the independent film space in our May monthly, which is the one that is distributed at Cannes. I mean, look, private equity and private finance is not new to the industry. I mean, we all know stories about, the proverbial dentist from Des Moines or the car dealer from Newark who invests their family fortune or their pension fund into a project, or various high net worth individuals. I mean, that's a kind of very common feature for U.S. independent films, because they don't have the public funding mechanisms to to support their filmmakers. So, but I think what's interesting is you're seeing that happen in Europe a lot more now, because I think public funding pots shrink. I mean, happening in the UK, I think as Mona mentioned, and as kind of traditional co-production models come under a little bit of pressure, there is more need in the European art house space for private equity, for people to come in and invest in auteur projects. And I mean, interesting, Cannes Marche recognize that. They set up the investor circle, which is an event which I think you moderate, Wendy, which they set that up in 2023, and partly as a way to kind of try to bring in some of these these kind of very wealthy individuals or wealthy funds or private
Family offices are there too. Yeah.
offices, exactly, and introduce them to some of the biggest art house filmmakers working today. And I think it's been a very successful initiative for the most part. I mean, I spoke to some producers who've taken part in the investor circle leading up to Cannes. For the most part, it was they had positive experiences. I think one producer I spoke to had a not so positive experience because they thought that the investors in the room weren't really interested in anything other than English language projects, which of course curtailed. I mean, obviously some European authors do make English language projects, as Justine Triet is right now with Fonda, among others, but but yeah, there's certainly there's certainly a need for that. It was, I mean, one of the producers that I spoke to was actually Michel Dant, who's, the brother of Lucas Dant, and they participated last year with Coward, which of course is in Cannes competition this year, and they were kind of in full pre-production already, when they took part in Investor Circle last year. And Michel said, although they didn't get any specific investment from that participation, another financier reached out afterwards off the
Mm.
back of their participation and put in quite a big chunk of money into Coward. So it just enabled them to kind of be a bit more relaxed about their shoot, to really allow Lucas to be able to shoot that the way he wanted to. And he was really, at the time, he sort of said, I was thinking about not taking part, but I'm so glad I did now. And so this is an investor. He said they'll continue to work with, hopefully, on future projects. So these are the kind of good stories that you need to happen in the industry. We want these filmmakers to be supported. We want them to get the budgets that, to work at a slightly higher level, because, that obviously it's tough raising money, it's tough raising finance. So hopefully, that will be something that kind of continues to bear fruit, in the sort of coming years.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that you mentioned, is it Gentle Monster, the Marie Kreutzer film? That was also pitched at Investor Circle last year and is also in competition this year. So that's an
Yeah, and off the
interesting
back,
track record. Yeah.
exactly, and off the back of their participation, I think Desmar, which is the company that Mona profiled in our sort of finance special, they invested in Gentle Monster, off the back of Investor Circle last year. So absolutely, great, bring these companies on and bring them more into European art house cinema.
Good luck,
Yeah,
everybody.
good luck.
Get that money. I also just want to mention, Matt, you mentioned that in the Screen Monthly, there's this private equity focus, and as part of that, I wrote an article about brands investing in film, and that is an area that's really evolving. And in fact, on Saturday, the sort of public facing part of the Investors Circle at the Marche, we have a whole talk about that. And one of the people on that panel I know is a lawyer based in Paris who has told me that, yeah, it seems like we used to see more of that brands in film in the US, and it wasn't such a divided world. But she's seeing European and French filmmakers more and more open to those ideas. So that's something to watch. So, what would you say something you're looking forward to in the coming days at Cannes? It could be a press conference, a talk, and somebody you're interviewing. Anything you want to mention, Mona?
I am looking forward to visiting the Palestinian Pavilion, which I've not been to before. I think it's the third time they've done it, I believe. They did it last year. I think then they did it in 2018. And they've got a really interesting looking lineup of talks. So yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into that.
Okay, well, stay tuned. Matt, what about you?
I'm afraid I'm a bit more shallow than Mona, and I'm looking forward to going to the Hotel de Cap, which I don't get invited to every year, but I have been invited this year for the Women in Cinema dinner, which I'm going to on Thursday night, which is hosted by the Red Sea Film Foundation. So thank you very much to them for inviting me, and I'm going to put on my glad rags and attempt to bring some screen glamour to that event. But there's so many things happening over the next few days. I mean, so many festivals we work with are having receptions, and so many kind of commissions and film companies that we work with. So it's just nice to go and catch up with people that you maybe might see once a year. Reconnect with old friends and stuff like that. So very much looking forward to that. And then the Marche, again, they're quite forward thinking in terms of the stuff they put on. They have a creator economy summit. They have the AI for Talent summit, which I am going to attend just out of curiosity, because I don't really know a whole lot about AI. I'm very interested to see it. It is definitely kind of, reaching its tentacles more and more into the film industry. So I'm very curious to go see some of the speakers there. I mean, Darren Aronofsky is going to be speaking there, and the other French filmmaker Xavier Gens is going to be there. So I'm quite curious to see what comes out of that. And I don't know, maybe I'll get to see a film. I haven't decided which one that is yet, but that's an ambition.
I do hear films are screening here. Yes, Matt.
Yeah,
Seek
I
it
do as
out
well.
when we can. I haven't seen one on the ground yet, but thanks, Matt and Mona, for the chat today. We'll stay in touch with you as this podcast continues. And of course, remind everybody to stay tuned to screendaily.com for breaking news and grab the print issues every morning as well. And a big shout out to everyone listening, first of all, for giving us a piece of your day in Cannes, but also the whole team at Screen, who is very busy, but has even been quite quiet while I've been in the office recording this podcast, and really helps out on this. Especially a shout out to producer Ellie Cownan and our web editor Orlando Parfit. And thanks on behalf of all of us, and we will see you again tomorrow.